Hi, it's Charlotte Cheney, and this is Soul Connections. It is September 17th, 2018, and time is zipping by. I can't believe it. Um, anyway, we are dealing with hurricanes right now, and to be honest with you, I'm not really watching the news. I'm not really up to date with it all, and I feel bad, kind of, but I also feel like I don't really have space in my life right now to be following all the news. And there are times when it's all up here and I don't have a choice to follow it or not. So tonight we're going to talk about being overwhelmed. I wanted to come here last week, but my camera did not work. It was a Facebook issue. And hey, Lisa. Oh, wow. Lisa's in the storms. Really nice to see you there. So just talking about being overwhelmed. So you can imagine why I might have picked the subject of being overwhelmed, and it is because I've been struggling with being overwhelmed. So it's just, I'm kind of figuring out how to move forward when I'm feeling overwhelmed. And so what I've decided is that, hey, Tiara, what I've decided is that I've been feeling overwhelmed because I've got all this stuff like here and it's huge and I don't know how I'm going to get it all done. And so it's overwhelming. Like, I'm going to do this. It's kind of paralyzing to me. Sometimes I'm just paralyzed. I'm like, particularly because I have ADD and I've got that creativity and I don't have the organization thing going on. And so I really have been breaking it down. And first of all, priorities, and then second of all, really making note of all the things that I'm attached to. And when I can break it down, I realize it's really not that overwhelming. So when I talk about priorities, one thing I'm doing right now is I'm committed. It's fall, and I know a lot of us are starting new things, and I am committing. My top priority is to my Bible study at church. I started it last year, and then my husband started running for office and all these things got in the way, and I just realized it wasn't going to happen. And so I didn't complete what I started last year, and it really didn't feel good, although I was doing studies on my own. But I want to do this with a group. I want to do it with my church. I want to be a part of this group. Hi, Shannon. So making a commitment to my church Bible study and the homework that is with it is my top priority. And it is because that is the only thing I really want to do is God's will. And I realize all these other things I'm committed to are kind of offshoots of my top priority, which is God's will. But often I lose the top priority of God's will and I get focused on the offshoots of how I'm going to manage God's will. So for example, in my life, I've got a lot of volunteering going on right now. I'm a member of, I'm joining something called, it's for middle school girls. It's empowering middle school girls at a public school here in Frederick. And I'm so excited about it. I feel like it's something that I'm going to be able to do to contribute to the drug crisis, to the trafficking crisis, and taking time and pouring good things into these middle school girls. And part of it's because I needed it in middle school and didn't have it. And part of it's because God blessed me with 4 sons. And I just, I'm dying to be a support system to these girls, but I can't just sign up and go. This particular event requires background check. I had to take a sex abuse class, which was very taxing on my heart. If you love children and you do something like that, you just see the horrors that can happen to them. And I'm in this little sidebar. Take a sex abuse class if you can. Look online. I don't know offhand what mine was called. Maybe I'll put it in the notes later, but it was so informative and very helpful. But anyway, so I had to do that. I've got it fingerprinted. And so I'm glad they're really taking care of these girls by making sure that the people that are coming in contact with them are really have good intentions, which I do. but that's a lot of work. Then I am working with the Spanish speaking community of Maryland and getting their things kicked off. And I'm just doing all kinds of things. And Brian and I have developed this hospitality business where we have Airbnbs. And so we're buying these homes and we're decorating them, and we're having people come and stay in them. They love them and it's wonderful, but it's all these things, and they're all for God. Everything I'm doing is for God. But if I don't sit back and recognize that everything I'm doing is for God, and if I make my one priority closest with God, then I'm going to get out of balance, and I'm going to get, I just like focused on these things and lose the purpose. So my Bible verse this week in my study is John 15:5, which I will try and do the best I can, which I am the vine and you are the branches. And if man is in me and I am in him, there will be much fruit. But if God's not in me and I'm not in him, there will be nothing. Nothing is a tough word when you're thinking about fruit with the Lord. And I want there to be fruit in my life. And so what I'm learning through my study is I need to be connected with God, and I need to make it a priority, and I need to have that be my breath, right? My life. And so when I do that, everything else is going to fall into place. And so, in addition to things I mentioned earlier, I'm writing, speaking, and the truth is I haven't shared this a lot lately, but I have this story that I wanted to initially write a novel, and now I've decided I'm going to really pursue film. And so I'm looking for a writing team to help me with it. And I intend this to be a massive blockbuster. I'm so really excited about it, but I'm like, how in the world am I going to fit this into all this stuff? And I am, if it's God's will, if I'm taking my time and I'm focusing on him and prioritizing my time to being with him. And so I just really can't state that enough. So some other research I've done as far as finding balance and not being overwhelmed in our life is, one thing I speak about often is self-care. And I just want to remind you, in case you've forgotten, because we do often forget, self-care is not indulgent. It is a necessity. It is a necessity to people that you love and those who love you and those that are watching you. And if you're not taking care of yourself, you're really damaging those that are in your sphere. And I don't mean to scare you or anything like that, but the truth is you are. And so I want to really encourage you to take care of yourself. And so, I've got my journal here. I've got my SEEP system. And if you haven't gotten my journal, please do. You can order it on my website, charlottesoul.com. Here we go. SEEP. So, and this is the journal that you take a little bit of time. So maybe your time with God would be taking this time with this journal daily and checking in with yourself spiritually, environmentally, emotionally, and physically. And so I always say, don't criticize yourself if you're not where you want to be or where you're ultimately headed, right? Life is a journey, and you're not going to be today where you're going to be a year from now. And so don't beat yourself up for where you are today, but take note of it. Stop and say, where am I spiritually? Well, I'm here and I'd like to be here. Just taking note of it. Is that healthy thing? Hi, Kelly. So taking care of yourself is mandatory. So part of taking care of yourself is prayer. And prayer is really hard in today's life, right? We're busy, and to stop and be still with God can be uncomfortable. It really can. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes my brain's racing so much, my prayer comes out in a journal. Dear God. And for me, it's so fun. I can go back to that journal and see what I prayed for before. And sometimes I don't recognize God answering my prayers, but when I go back and I see what he's done. And I'm just going to give you an example now, because I don't think my son's watching. I don't think my children watch this. So anyway, last November, I looked back in my journal and I was so concerned about one of my sons, and I was really sad. So we've been through a lot. My kids were young when I was diagnosed with cancer. I was in bed for a year, and then I got well, and then went through divorce, and then we had this really big crisis in our family on top of everything else. It was pretty traumatic. So I just sort of lost my child, this one particular child, and I was really, really sad. And I was looking back at this prayer, and I'm like, Lord, what happened to that child? At one point, he was so different. Well, I forgot about that prayer. And I remember kind of around Christmas sort of seeing something different. And throughout the spring, we went to visit him, and I was just thinking, wow, that's a child I raised. And this summer, he went to my church for the first time, and that was a big deal. But there was an altar call at my church, and that child walked up in his sweatpants and knelt at the altar and dedicated his life to Christ. And I had forgotten that I had prayed for him. I'd forgotten that last November I was feeling such turmoil over his spirit. I was so thankful I had it in my journal. So that was, I got a little sidetracked tonight, but just taking your heart and pouring it into your journal will help you focus, and not worrying about your grammar and all that stuff. It's just between you and God. But if sitting still and breathing and meditating and being in God's presence is something you have the patience for and doing, steal away and do it. But take note of what you're doing and incorporate your Bible. Yoga is something that I do. Some Christians are like, don't do yoga, it's the devil, this, that, and the other. And I watched the Netflix series, Wild Wild Country. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's about a cult and from India. And I saw kind of a lot of how yoga and meditation kind of was not the way I do it when I saw that film. And I thought, I can see why some people are really concerned about it. But for me, I'm sitting there doing yoga, I'm praying, and I'm talking to Jesus the whole time. I'm not really doing these. And I used to not say namaste because I thought, hi Donna. I thought, I'm bowing to some God. You're really not. You're just bowing in honor. It's not really bowing to some other God. So anyway, hey Trisha, good to see you guys. I'm so glad you guys are here. So we're just talking about self-care and ways to deal with being overwhelmed. And so we talked about prayer, meditation, yoga. One thing I've learned in yoga is margin. And so I really got into yoga when I was sick. That's when I really started committing myself. I couldn't do anything in my life really, except go to the hospital, go to the doctor, take my, chemotherapy and whatever. But I got myself to yoga and I got on my mat and I learned a lot about life on that mat. And one thing I learned was to really stretch my body. I actually grew when I was sick, which is not kind of normal, but I stretched my body up because I was creating margin in my back and between my vertebra. And I understand that, I take them at Ananda Shala. We'll talk about it. So when I put margin in my back and space between my bones, and it felt so good and empowering. And I realized I need to take that same space and put it in my life. Some of us live our lives back to back to back to back to back activities. And I'll be honest with you, that's been me lately. Brian and I have been so unbelievably busy. I have not had time to go to my yoga class. I've not had time to do the things that I need to do for myself, and I've gotten off of balance. Now this week I'm doing tons better, but last week was really, maybe that's why I wasn't here. I was really struggling to get back in balance because I let some of these things go. Preparing these homes to rent is a lot of physical work. And so I can't I don't think I can exercise and do this. Well, yoga, self-preservation, right? So yoga, I realize, is a different type of activity than physically working around the house, because when I'm in yoga, I'm stretching, and that is getting rid of toxins, and it's paying attention to my body. And so if I'm just using my energy preparing a house for rent per se, that's not stopping and getting in touch with my body. That's not integrating my body and my soul. Whereas in yoga, I'm paying attention to my body. I'm paying attention to my breath. I'm paying attention to my muscles and my strength. And, one of the major things that I think helped me get out of an abusive marriage was standing in the warrior pose, which I really can't do right here, but you can't stand in a warrior pose and be abused, and when you're taking care of yourself and you're realizing your value, people can't really hurt you the way they can when you're busy. And like one of the byproducts I noticed of my busyness in the last several months is I've been eating out fast food, which hi Jenny, I don't usually eat fast food. And granted, I've been eating salads from Chick-fil-A, except on Sunday. Hey Paula, that's really disappointing when you're planning like, oh, I'll just go to Chick-fil-A and get a salad and it's Sunday, but way to go, Chick-fil-A, for not working on Sundays. So anyway, it's hard when you all are just joining and you've kind of missed where we're going, but you'll have to go back and watch it. So anyway, just talking about yoga and the exercise that's right for me. I am not a runner. I don't have the body to be a runner. I don't do real well in these high power exercise classes, but some people do. And so kind of paying attention to what works for you. Some people love running. Some people love these real athletic classes. And, these things can be very inexpensive. We have the Tally Center down the street, and, our whole family is a member there. And you don't have to invest a lot of money in exercise. You can go walk with a friend, you go running with a friend, but taking care of your physical self is so valuable. And, winter's coming and it's hard to get out. And I really find myself thank you. I really find myself getting sad in the winter with the sun's not around, and I just don't do real well. So I have to be mindful to get myself out, see some people. I'm also going to go to an infrared sauna, which I discovered this spring or summer, where I'm going to get warmed by the lights. And then the lights are also going to help keep me happy, I think, right? Happy lights. So, all right, looking at other ways to just kind of reduce stress and not feel overwhelmed. Watching the news full time can really wear you down. And that's why I started this evening saying, I'm sorry, I haven't followed the storms that much, but I don't really watch the news. And I think people are like, what's the matter with you? How could you not watch the news? But the reality is, hey, Gina, I can't. I'm a real feeler. And if I watch these news stories, they just really last with me and they wear me down. And I just don't then have the flexibility to move through life without worrying about what I saw on the news today. And so I know what's going on. I know there's hurricanes and I know that there's flooding in the Carolinas and whatever, but it's not because I've glued to the news. It's just because I've seen it past my sphere. And anyway, so being mindful of how much news you're taking into your system and hey, Leah, how you're letting it weigh you down. The news, I'm going to read this from the HuffPost. The news might be captivating, but we are aware of how it affects us. Quite apart from the question of the content, excessive interaction with these devices can do considerable physical and psychological harm. Beyond that, the content itself often brings up agitation, which can impact us long after we put the device down. We need to be mindful of what we're exposing ourselves to. So I'm just saying, I don't watch the news, and I feel a little out of it because I don't really know what's going on with all the flooding and whatever and where it is, but I have to say I'm not burdened with it. And so I'm here to be with you tonight. So it's a couple other ideas to keep yourself feeling good. Keep learning and growing, no matter how old you are. My mother turned 79 on the 15th of September, and she has just started taking this class at her church to learn how to be a better listener, and it could lead her into lay ministry if she wanted to do that. But I'm like, how great that she's doing that. She's also taking ukulele lessons, but right now she's gone on a cruise with one of her girlfriends, and so she's missing those things. But I mean, gosh, how exciting to be 79 years old and still learning. So, making sure we have the mindset that there's life in front of us, and that we need to keep learning and keeping our brains sharp. And I do stuff on my iPad to keep my brain sharp. I play games and challenge myself with the Jeopardy app. And recently I've started doing something called Leveled Up. I think Level Up is what it's called. Anyway, it's challenging my brain and making me do math and things that is really hard. Oh man, it's really hard, but I love challenging my brain because I just want to be the best I can be. All right, take time to be still, meditate, focus on your breath. We talked about that. Exercise, we talked about that. Connect with nature. That is something that we don't do very often these days. We're busy, we're running around, we're not, in touch with nature. I live downtown. It's really an effort. I live right near a park, but I need to just break away from stuff and go and be in nature. I need to do that more personally. That's something I need to grow in. Eat healthy. It says here, eat plant-based foods. And the reality is we do. We need to add more plant-based foods into our lives. That's where a lot of our nutrients come from. And be mindful of what we're eating when we're really, really busy and we're burning the candle at both ends. We're not taking time to prepare healthy food. We're not letting it digest. I'm totally at fault with this chewing my food, letting it, your mouth is a major part of your digestive system, right? You chew your food and you kind of soupy and then it goes down and goes down. Anyway, so make sure you're eating healthy and you're eating well. Get involved. Go and volunteer. And I started tonight by saying a couple things I'm doing to volunteer, and it's hard. I'm busy. I'm really, really busy. And one of the volunteer positions I'm doing, I have to go through all this extra work to do. Oh, hey, Jennifer. It's a sacrifice, but I know that once it starts and once I get to be with these girls, that I'm gonna be so filled up by having these connections with these other people whose lives are going to be impacted by mine by committing to them. And so it's needed. You need to volunteer. You need to get out. You need to give of yourself to other people. It helps us get out of ourselves. I mean, it's really hard to be depressed when you're helping someone who has needs that you don't have. Figure out what makes you feel good and do it. And I think that is really, really important. And, again, don't feel guilty about taking time to read or ride your bike or play your game or, go to a movie. It's okay. Go to a movie. If you go by yourself, it's okay to take some time for yourself. Go on vacation. We're just not intended to just work all the time. We need to have some downtime. We need to have some rest. And, a lot of this stuff sounds expensive. It doesn't need to be. So just, look into ways of, if money's tight, look into ways of doing it that's inexpensive. See if you can, what if you traded homes with someone? You can't work in their home, right? You have to relax. So that's a thought. Okay, practice gratitude. That is something, one of the sayings I read the other day that said, what if you only had today what you thanked God for yesterday? That really impacted me. And I have really been mindful of gratitude with that and just taking, because I want it tomorrow. I want my home. I want my marriage. I want my health. I want my children. I want those things. And so I need to be sure I'm taking time to thanking God for them. And So, all right, listen to music and dance. My husband and I went to a concert last night. It was so fun to just sort of get out of it all. We've been so busy, and to just check out and get lost in music and dance. And that was another thing he says, be kind. Kindness begets kindness. And excuse me, one of the things I do frequently out of kindness, and because I'm a Texan and we're just kind of raised this way, but on the road, I love to help other people out. I love to slow my car down and let someone go in. Or if there's a lot of traffic and there's someone trying to make a left-hand turn, I just stop and let them go. And it doesn't mean any difference in my day whatsoever, but it could really make a difference in their day, right? Because they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for letting me in. It's left-hand turns can be so hard. And just giving something so simple as a left-hand turn, or, again, it's maybe the texting to me, but I pull my car over and I let people pass. It's just, if they're in a hurry and I'm not, I'm like, go ahead, just a little bit of kindness, maybe smiling at someone, maybe acknowledging the homeless person in your presence. That's a human being. Maybe they're really dirty and you don't like the fact that they're standing at your car asking you for money, but it maybe stepping back and saying, hey, you're a human being, and maybe nobody's really acknowledged that today, and I'm going to be that person. So just taking time to be kind. Make a point to have healthy sleeping hours. Wow, I cannot believe the amount of people that go to bed at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and they don't feel healthy. I mean, I have to say I'm a tired girl because I work hard during the day, but I hit the hay about 10 every night, and I get up about 6 or 7 in the morning. And everybody's got a different schedule. That works for me, but being mindful of your sleep. And some people are night owls. I'm not, so I don't quite know what that's like, but I don't think going to bed at 2 a.m. is good. And I just don't think it's going to start your day off well. And so really, if you're one that doesn't go to bed at a normal time, try and move that up a little bit and make it part of your self-care, getting good sleep. Don't hold grudges. Forgive and receive forgiveness. So we had a big talk in my private group today, and if you're not in it, join it if you're a woman, and if you're a man, I'm sorry, but this is a girls only group. But we talked about forgiveness, and we talked about, I'm just going to share, one member was sharing about having had 2 abortions and feeling really guilty and shameful about it. And I'm going to tell you, I've had an abortion and it hurts, but I don't feel guilty. I know that I'm forgiven. I know that my Savior dying on that cross covers all sin. It covers the sin of the pedophiles. It covers all sin. And so if you're someone who's struggling to receive Christ's forgiveness, I'm going to ask you to please do some work in that and understand what Jesus did for you, and he died for you for your sin, and you should receive that forgiveness and be washed and white and free of that burden. So receive forgiveness, give forgiveness. People hurt us. Who hurts us the most sometimes is our family, right? Family can really, really hurt us, and we need to forgive them. And sometimes we need to forgive over and over and over. And sometimes when I can't forgive someone, I start praying for that person. I start praying good things for that person. It's really hard. Even if I don't mean it at first, I do it anyway. And it's very hard to hold a grudge when you're praying for someone. Stop people pleasing. So I pulled out a book tonight that I want to share with you in case you don't know. And this is actually not the book, The Gifts of Imperfection. This is a journal. But if you've not read The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown, I'm going to suggest you get that. So this is a really, really powerful book that has really been impactful on me. And I listen actually to my books on audio. But learning that it's okay not to be perfect. I think part of the reason I get overwhelmed a lot is because I'm trying to be perfect. I don't want to make a mistake. I want to do perfect, and so learning that it's okay not to be perfect, that being imperfect is a gift. And so that's one way to do it. So I'm going to just suggest this again. Brene Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection. So try not to people please, try and God please, right? And all God really wants is your time. And so you don't need to go please him with your sacrifice and your volunteering. Don't do that to please God. If you're volunteering because you're in a relationship with God and you love God, and out of that closeness with God, you desire to serve others, but not because you're trying to earn God's love. That's not going to happen. You've already got it. So, make it a point to laugh. That's something I need to work on a little bit right now. And sometimes for me, it's sitting down with the TV and bringing up an episode of The Office or something like that and just really laughing, something that makes you laugh. Laughter is really, really important. So maybe going to a comedy show, going to do something like that is fun. Travel, learn about other cultures. And again, some of this stuff sounds really, really expensive, but it doesn't really need to be. So that's about our time tonight. And I hope that you took something away from this, something that really struck you and said, you know what, I can do that. I can do that for myself. I can do that for those I love. I can do that. And so I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to pray for you. But before I do, I just wanted to remind you of my journal, my soul work journal that you can get at my website. This is the first page. It's beautiful, isn't it? Soul work journal. Oh, it's a little hard to figure the cameras out. Anyway, go ahead and get yourself a copy. If you do, let me know how it's going. I want to know how the changes you've made. I want to know the areas that you've grown in. And okay, so please pray with me. Dear Lord, I just wanted to thank you so much that when I'm feeling overwhelmed and out of balance, that you are not. You have not lost your place, Lord. You are still standing on your throne. You are still in charge of it all, Lord. Even when the world feels out of control, even when there's hurricanes and even when there's tornadoes and everything feels out of place, you're still God and you're still on your throne and you're still in charge, Lord. And I thank you for that, Lord. I thank you that when my life feels out of control, that you're still there and you're still in control, Lord. And all you desire of me is closeness. And I know that when I take time out of my life to come and connect with you, that you'll speak to me and you'll work through me. And that when I am in you and you are in me, there will be much fruit. And that's what I desire most of all through my life, Lord, is fruit. God, I pray for each and every person here tonight, Lord, that you would be in their life, that you would help them to understand that you are carrying their balls and that are in the air, Lord. And if I just ask that you would help them to have someone in their life to remind them of that, because I forget sometimes, and I have a husband who reminds me that you're still God and you're not on vacation and I don't need to take over, that you've got it, Lord. And thank you for that. And thank you that I can always come to you, that I'm always forgiven, even when I've sinned, even when I've acted like you, even when I think I'm God and forget who you are, God. You still love me, Lord. You always love me. And you always love each person here, God. And you're not counting our wrongs, Lord, particularly when we come to you and we seek your forgiveness, Lord. Lord, I just pray for each person. I ask you for health and wealth and prosperity. I ask you to give them wisdom, to give all of us wisdom, Lord, that we may go out and shine your light, that we would be caring for ourselves. So when there's a crisis in the world, like there is right now in the Carolinas, that we can show up strong and in our core of our soul, Lord, that we can provide for others because we have taken care of ourselves, Lord, through you. Lord, bless this time. Bless these people, Jesus, in your holy name. Amen. Thank you for being here. God bless you guys. See you next week.